Hey, let's talk to Denver Post Broncos beat writer Troy Renck right now, who's he's there every day. Every day in the locker room talking to these guys, getting the inside scoop. So, Troy, we love having you on every week. Look, man, how do you go from 12-0 up on the Raiders to 15-12 down at the end of the game?
Yeah, like you guys have pointed out, statistically it's an anomaly that you could lose that game given how well the defense played. First time in the history of the rivalry, the Broncos haven't scored a touchdown against the Raiders, an offensive touchdown.
Oof.
But they did not play well in the third quarter. And in the fourth quarter, when they needed to make plays, they put the defense, they compromised it. And it's just, you guys have hit on it. When they don't run the ball well, they are in a difficult position, because if you're asking Brock to drop back 50 times, he's going to get hit, and he's going to get sacked. That's the same issue they have with Manning. The issues you saw yesterday were almost identical to the ones we saw earlier in the season with Manning. The difference was the defense was getting a pick six or a scoop and score. But you can't rely on your defense to score a touchdown to win a game. That's insane, and they've got to get better up front where they can run the ball, and some of that's on the coaching staff. They did not game plan well and adjust in the second half when Matt just started to just bull rush anyone that was in front of him.
Well, Troy, let me ask you, I mean, we're dealing with a quarterback making his first NFL start. How much might this be, excuse me, due to the fact that you've got a guy who's inexperienced and the coaching staff doesn't want to put too much on his plate? I mean, is it reasonable to think that, hey, they're trying to proceed with caution with Brock? Or at this point, I mean, 4 games into his career, we've got to let this guy make plays.
Well, that's some of it. But if you watch the film, he had chances downfield. I think part of it is Brock is trying to learn the balance between taking a shot, taking a risk, and then just throwing it away. I mean, like you said, he's only in his 4th game. He had a couple chances downfield. I believe in his mind he's thinking, well, I can't turn it over here. I can't. So he probably needs to take a few more risks going forward. If they don't get that, the deep ball is one of his strengths. They need to get that going to help with the running game. They could not run in the first half, and they almost had to abandon it in the second half because it was so bad. But they played cover 2. They just invited Brock to just dump the ball over the middle, not unlike it's very similar to how Seattle played the Broncos in the Super Bowl. We'll give you anything right over the line of scrimmage because we're going to hit that guy.
Right.
But we're not going to give you anything on the outside. So once in a while, you have to get a seam route to cause them to adjust their coverage, and the Broncos never did. They never did. And then defensively, you hate to put it on one guy, but Shiloh Ko had an awful game. You can't buy it on a double move down, 3rd and 15, where they really can't get a first down near the goal line. You can't buy it on a double move. That's just inexplicable. He took blame for it, but the reality is it can't happen. No. He alone compromised the defense with one just awful mistake.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the guy was signed, we joke about it, he was signed off Twitter, early in the week. His first practice was Wednesday. And then with Bruton and T.J. Ward out, you got a guy who's been there for 3 days, basically, 4 days, in coverage on a 3rd and 15. He makes a mistake. Guy gets by him. Darian Stewart tries to cover for it. Game-winning touchdown right there. So, look, you don't... Coaches don't like to use injuries as an excuse. Oh, it's next man up, next man up.
Right.
But when you're on your 3rd or 4th next man up and a guy who's, pleading for a job on Twitter, Troy, this is a recipe for disaster, too. Once they get the guys back from injury and starters back from injury, this may not happen. They may not have lost this game yesterday if they'd have been healthy.
Well, T.J. Ward alone probably prevents them from losing that game. And coaches will never say that. It's never about one guy. It's never about one play. And they're right for the most part. But obviously, getting Ward back against the Steelers is paramount. I don't know how healthy he'll be, but I expect him to play. And as they get healthier these next few weeks with Ward and Bruton, that will only help. But that still doesn't address the bigger offensive issues of against good teams that come up with an attack to stop them running the football. What is their counterpunch? Mm-hmm. Because what we saw yesterday, it's not the loss that is alarming. It's the fact that how are they going to win in the playoffs? If a team makes, defenses them this way, they can't run the ball. What is their answer?
Right.
Because at that point, it's a win and survive tournament, and you can't have a half like they had in advance in the postseason. So for me, that's the bigger issue. Even if they lose at the Steelers and they play well, their season's going to come down to, in many ways, that game against Cincinnati to make sure you get a 2 seed, a bye, play at home to give yourself a legitimate shot in the playoffs.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and I'm not talking about our hideous sweaters. We've got
Ugly
a
sweater
quarterback
Monday.
on the mend. There's people saying, you know what, maybe it's time to bring Peyton back. Your thoughts, Troy, about the reality here. Could Peyton, based on the fact that we haven't seen him in 3.5 weeks now,
Right.
4 really, do you think he could step back in and do any better based on what we saw from the line and the running game than what Brock did if they insert him in the lineup this week?
Well, he won't play this week. He's
For
not
sure.
ready.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not ready. I mean, they may announce it today. I don't know. I just know that he's not ready. Do not expect him to play this week. The earliest he would be available, based on his kind of where he is in his recovery and rehab, would be the Cincinnati game, realistically. Now, could he do better? Well, certainly he can do checks better, autos better. There's things he does better based on experience alone.
Right.
The issue is when you bring him back, you can't bring him back in the pistol. That's a disaster for the running game. So do you bring him back in shotgun and under center combination? What, and he's got to be healthy, guys. I mean,
Yeah.
a healthy Peyton Manning, I'm fine with them going back to. I really am. And that's nothing against Brock because I think he's held his own. But if Manning is 70, 80% and he has to operate exclusively out of the shotgun, I just don't see how they can succeed with that formula. But it all depends on his health, and we'll know more after the Pittsburgh game. I think we'll have a better idea of what is realistic for Manning when he could return. But again, for me, the earliest we'd have that conversation would be the Cincinnati game.
Yeah. All right, Troy. We'll hear more from Gary Kubiak at 1 o'clock in his press conference at Dove Valley. So we'll see you out there, and thanks for joining us again, man. Have a
Thanks,
good one.
Troy.